discussion of GDBC API. So let me just quickly review what we did so far. Meanwhile, others may join. Okay, yeah, just a second. Okay, so in the last class, we saw how to add the records to a table using that insert query, how to load the drivers, establish the connection. So why do we use statement object? Uh, I can say to execute the query. Okay, so we use statement object to execute the query. Okay, yes. You see, in the statement object itself, we'll have this method execute update. So, what exactly the execute update method does? Can you people tell me? What it returns? I'm sorry. What exactly this execute update method returns? It returns yes. So it need not be 1 or 0, but yeah, it returns 1 exactly if it is able to update the if it inserts one record. So generally how it works is always this execute update method, it returns the number of records, the execute update method, sorry, it returns a number of records updated as a result of executing this query. It returns the number of records updated as a result of executing this query. You see, if it returns 1, that means this query has updated 1 record. If it returns 0, that means it didn't update any records. So if it returns 10, that means this query has updated 10 records. It's always that number. It represents the number of records updated as a result of executing this query. Okay. So hope you people got it. Yes. Fine. So now if I want to execute, generally when do we use this execute query method? Can you people tell me? when do you use execute update method? Like what to execute what type of queries? Using execute update method, what type of queries we can execute? Uh, Using generally we use execute update method to execute non-select queries. Non-select queries. Non-select queries means insert, update, and delete. For executing insert query, update query, and delete query, we use execute update method. Okay, fine. Now, if I want to execute a select query, then which method do we use? Yes. If I want to execute a select query, then which method do we use? Not guess, you have to tell me. Uh, Execute query method. Okay. You see, in order to execute select query, we'll use execute query method. And basically, the execute query method, it returns a result set object always. Execute query method, it returns a result set object. Yes. So what exactly is this result set object here? Yes. Okay, we'll get a result set object, right? Oh, it's predefined. It's part of your API itself. Okay. It is from JDBC API. Got it? So you'll get this object, so which is internally created by execute query method. Yes. So how do we use this result set object, or why do we need this result set object? Yes. So why do we use result set object? You see, okay, let me see the answer first of all. I'm sorry. It stores the resulting contents. Yeah, generally, when we execute a select query, as a result of executing that query, will be fetched, you'll get some records from the table, right? You may get some records. Now, how will you read those records? How will you read those records? So using the result set object itself. Okay, result set object, I can say it will help us, or it will assist us to read that records which are fetched as a result of executing this query. So it represents that records, I can say, which are fetched as a result of executing this select query. So you got it, all of you? So hope this is clear for you people. Now you see, using the result set object itself, now we'll be able to read that records. So I'm reading the data row wise here as of now, and we'll store it. Yes. So this is about the result set object. Okay. Now you see, what we are doing is the records are the rows which we fetch from the database server. You see, we don't use them as is in Java. Java has got its own data representation, right? What is it? How do we represent data in Java? How is data represented in Java? Data in Java. How do we represent data? Data, how it is represented in Java? Or suppose if you got some data, so how will you represent it, or how will you store it in Java? How will you work with data in Java? Objects. Please remember, the standard data representation is objects itself. For suppose, whenever you've been given some task to store any data in Java, the first class, right from the first class, when we are talking about object oriented concepts, if you people remember, as I told you people always, the data in Java is represented using objects. So whenever you have been given some task to store the data, so immediately we'll create a Java object and we'll store the data into the object. Am I right? You'll store the data into the object. Yes. So how is data represented in Java? Always in the form of objects. Okay, please remember. Now, how is data represented in the database server? So, if you were to store the data in the database server, and how the data is represented in the database server? Yes, records or rows, we say. You know, there are different data representations. Okay, so in Java objects database, I can say it is records or rows. There is one more representation like XML. Even you'll find that we got XML format and JSON format. Yeah, there are many such representations, data representations. So you'll come across XML soon. I'm going to show you people XML already because we have started with advanced concepts. Definitely you'll come across XML also. XML is one data representation format, I can say. And you got JSON. JSON is another data representation which is used not in Java. It is one of the uh, data representations which is widely used in web applications and all. Yeah. So as of now you came across as another representation, that is rows or records. You know already Java. In Java, data is represented as objects in the form of objects. So always we store the data in the objects when it comes to Java. You people know that, right? Yeah. So so these are all important. You see, if you are fetching a record from the database server, you know, and if you want to use that record here, if you want to use that record in Java, you can't straight away use it, okay? Because the way the data represented in Java is different from the way data is represented in database, right? In Java objects, in the database it is records or rows. So you see, that's the reason why what I'm doing here, I'm transforming that records or rows into objects. So what we are doing, you see, from the result set I'm reading the data, and in turn I'm storing it into the object here. In turn I'm storing it into the object here. So you got this, all of you? So we are fetching the records, and in turn we are storing it into objects. Yeah, can I have yes or no? This is very important for you people, okay? Because in Java always you'll be doing this. So if you got some data from a different source, okay, so if the data is if it is in a different format, so first of all you have to make sure that the data is transformed into appropriate Java format, that is objects, okay? So is it clear? Okay, hope everyone got it, right? Yeah. So uh, a note, I'm sorry. You see, I guess there is one more day to go. You'll hear this background noise and all. I'm sorry, I can't do anything in this record. So though you people are not complaining, thanks for that. So if it is very much unbearable, let me know. Okay. Yes. If it is completely unbearable, let me know. Okay. If there is any background noise, if you hear it, if you're not able to concentrate, okay. So if it is unbearable, just let me know. Okay. Fine. So yeah. So far we have just reviewed the concepts what we discussed in the last class, and whatever we did in the last class I was just reviewing them. Yeah. So today we'll move ahead. Now you know the code which we have written in the last class, you see, to add the records, we'll try to improvise it. Yes, we have to improvise it. Let's try to do that. Yes. In what ways we can improvise, I'll tell you. As of now, you see here, there is one restriction, or there is one, limitation for this query, I can say. So can you people tell me what is the limitation for this query? What is the limitation for this query? I'm saying that there is a limitation for this query. So what is the limitation for this query? See, this insert query which you got here, I can say that the values that record data, that values, see, that record that values are hard coded. The values are hard coded here, right? Yes. That raw data is hard coded. So no matter how many times you execute the query, so you'll end up inserting the same record, right? So can we use this query to execute different record here? What if I want to insert a different record? Then what am I supposed to do here? If I want to insert another record, then what to do in this case? So we have to modify this query or edit this query. So that means we have to modify this code which you got here. Then only you'll be able to insert a new record, right? Then only it will be possible. Yes. Okay. So without modifying this code or this query, you cannot add another record. So this query is not reusable. This query is not reusable. So what do people think? How can we make this query reusable? Yes. How can we make this query reusable? Dynamically and values. But as of now, the values are hard coded here, right? Yes. You see, now what we can do is we can change this query. Instead of hard coding the values, use this question marks. So what are these question marks? So basically we call them as bind parameters. Okay. So that question marks which you got here, we call them as bind parameters. Just a second. Okay. So what are bind parameters? Bind parameters means basically I can say that You can call them as placeholders. At runtime, we can replace this bind parameters with some values. We can replace the bind parameters with some values, I can say. Yes. So now you see each bind parameter has got an index. It starts with 1. So always the bind parameter index starts with 1, and you have to read the index values of the bind parameters from left to right. Read the index values of bind parameters from left to right always. Okay. Yes. So now you see we can replace that bind parameters with the values. Yes. How can we do that? So first of all, you see, whenever we are using bind parameters, we should not use this statement object. Okay, we are not supposed to use this statement object. So use prepared statement object. So bind parameters, they are not supported by statement object. Bind parameters, you will find that they are not supported by statement object here. Yes. So we have to use prepared statement object. Yes. Now you see, before we execute this query, we have to assign the values to that bind parameters. So the values for that bind parameters, we can pass them as parameters to that method, you know. So whenever this method is called, we can pass set of values to this method. We can pass set of values to this method so that values can be used to store, sorry, that values can be used to assign it to the bind parameters here. Yes. Okay. Now earlier you see for this method there are no parameters. Now let's try to add the bind parameters here. Okay. Yes. So sorry, not bind parameters, parameters I can say. ID, name, price, and description. Yes. So to this method, or this method, you see it takes 4 values. That means whenever you call this method, you have to pass 4 values. This values which you got here, they will be stored into this parameters. In turn, we'll assign those values to the bind parameters. In turn, we'll assign those values to the bind parameters, I can say. Okay. So let me show you people how to assign the values to that bind parameters. Now, how do we access bind parameters? How can we do that? Yes. Now, in order to assign the values to the bind parameters, first of all, you have to access that bind parameters, right? Assign the values to that bind parameters. We have to access them. How can we access those bind parameters? Using the index or position, I can say. For each bind parameter, as I told you people, you got an index or a position. Okay, you got a index or a position. So we can use that index or that position to access that bind parameter, I can say. Yes. So now in the prepared statement method, we have the set methods which we can use. Set int of index 1, bind parameter index 1, and what value will assign, that value is stored in that variable parameter id, variable id. You see, the set int method, where it is defined in the prepared statement object itself. Now why we have to use set int method? Now it depends on the type of data you have to assign to that bind parameter. So the first bind parameter which you got here, which is at index 1, sorry, the first bind parameter which you got here, which is at index 1. So basically, it represents which column? It represents which column? That column product ID, right? Now that column product ID, so basically it holds what type of value? Integer value. It holds integer value, right? You see, that's the reason why we use setInt method here to assign the value to that bind parameter. So that bind parameter, it represents the product ID column which takes integer value. Yes. So that's the reason why we use setInt method to assign the value to that bind parameter. Yes. And similarly, now we got second column here. Now second bind parameter. Second bind parameter, it represents which column? Second bind parameter, it represents which column? Product name. So product name is what type? String type. You see, because product name is string type, so we use set string method. So prepared statement dot set string index is to values this. That's it. Okay. Fine. So next, the third bind parameter is product price. Product price mean, so it is for product price, which is float type. So I'll use set float method. So access that bind parameter and assign the value which is in that variable. You see this ID, name, price, what are they? You see they are parameters or the variables, which will hold the values which are passed on to this method. So when this method is invoked, so the values will be passed on to this method. So that values will be stored into this variables. And in turn, we'll assign that values which are in this variables to the bind parameters in the query. That's it. So hope you people got it. Yes. Next, we got one more bind parameter, which is for product description. It is string type. So I'll use set string method description. That's it. Sorry. So this way, we'll assign the values to that bind parameters. And once we are done assigning the values, now we can execute the query. Repeat statement dot execute update. So is there any difference between the execute update method which we are using earlier and this execute update method which we are using now? Do you see any difference between these two execute update methods? So did anyone make a note of this? You know the difference here? Yes. Did anyone observe the difference? What is the difference? Uh, no. Main difference is that the execute update method here, so basically it won't take any argument. So earlier in the previous execute update method, we have to pass the query. In previous case, we have to pass the query. But now you see, we don't need to pass the query here. You got the difference? Then where we are passing that insert query, in this case, we don't need to pass that insert query here. So in previous case, we are passing the query. So where you will pass the query, You see, while creating the prepared statement object itself, you'll pass the query. You see, while obtaining the prepared statement object, prepared statement dot, sorry, to that prepared statement method itself, so which we used to obtain the query. To that method itself, we are passing the query. So that's the reason why again we don't need to pass that query to the execute update method. Okay. Yes. Hope you people got it. Okay. Now, so in order to call that add product method, so this time we have to pass 4 values, right? So let's test this code once. Okay. So let's see, we got this records. So the last record is 118. So let's add another record with the ID 119. Okay. So for that you say, I'll call that add product method. So let me make it static here. Okay. Add product 119, let's say. Product name spring in action. See, this way we'll call that method. Okay, add product method. By passing this values. So whatever the values we are passing here, these are arguments we say. That arguments will be stored into this variables now, right? So the method will be invoked and that arguments are stored into this parameters, I can say. Can we say parameters? Yes. This parameters now, they hold that values. In this method, you see what we are doing? We are constructing the query with the bind parameters. Okay, we'll establish the connection, we'll obtain a prepared statement object, and then here, see, we'll try to access that bind parameters using the index, and we are assigning the values which are in that parameters to this bind parameters. We are assigning the values which are in this bind parameters to the which are in the parameters to this bind parameters. Yes, that's it. So after assigning the values to the bind parameters, so we'll execute the query. Okay, so we are executing the query. That's it. So let's run this code once. See, I'll call that add product method by passing that values. So let's see. It says record added successfully. So and the database also, definitely you'll see this record. Yes. You see 119. Yes. So is it clear for everyone? So what we did here, so is it clear for everyone? You see, now if you want to add another record here, so what to do? If you want to add another record, then what to do? If I want to add another record, So you have to call that add product method and pass the set of values, like pass that product ID, name, description, price to that add product method. Yes, that's it. Very good. Okay, fine. Now you see we have improvised this code. Okay. Now, still we can improvise this code, I can say. Still, there is a scope to improvise it. And I can say that as of now, you see, this code which you have written, it is not completely, you know, based on the object-oriented concepts. You see, that now what to that add product method we are passing that product record, right? But the product record is not represented. It is not represented that way in Java. So how is product record represented in Java? This is not the right way, in Java I can say. So product record. So how it is represented in Java? How is product record represented in Java? As product object. Record is represented as object here, right? So this method which you got here, so it is supposed to take a product object reference. The right way is not this way. Okay, the method which you got here, the parameters are not supposed to be this way. The parameter here should be a product class type. That means whenever this method is called, a product object reference will be passed on. In that product object, you will have the data, product data. So that product record, product details will be in that product object. So that product object reference will be passed on to this method. Now this method should take that product object reference and use that reference to read the data from that object and assign it to that bind parameters. Now you see again, this time we are getting a product object reference. Now we have to read the data from that object and assign it that values which are in that object to this bind parameters this way. So this is the right approach in Java. Today I'm going to bet the sound is going to increase, noise is going to increase. So in our area almost the Nimajan is today itself, I guess. So everyone is starting now. Yeah. You see, we are reading the data from the product object and we'll assign it to that bind parameters. Yes. So this time, in order to call this add product method, in order to add a new record, what am I supposed to do here? What do you think? This time, in order to add the product record, what are we supposed to do? How will you call that add method now? Add product method. How to call that add product method? Yes. So this time, if you want to add a record, first of all, you need to create a product object and store that data into the product object. You have to store the data into product object. You see? So in that product object, now we got the data. So to that constructor, we are passing that values. So that values will be stored into the product object. The product object holds that data. Now we'll pass that product object reference to the add product method. Yes. Okay. So now I'm not going to execute this code. It will definitely work. But you people got it. Instead of passing that values individually, so what we are doing, that complete product data, we are storing it into a product object, and we are simply passing that reference to that add product method. So that add product method will use that reference and to read the data from the product object, and it adds it to the table. Yes. So this is the right approach. So any questions? So now we'll move on. So in the previous class already we saw how to fetch the records and transform them into objects, that we saw. So now we have improvised this code a lot, I can say. Yes. Okay. Now let's do one thing. We'll try to understand the design of the JDBC API. So this is important. So that means we'll dig into the details of this JDBC API. Now just imagine, let's say when Java was introduced at the time, Java people thought of providing an API which helps the Java developers to interact with the database server. Java people, they thought of providing an API which helps Java developers to interact with the database server. Okay. Now just assume that now there is no JDBC API at that time when people thought of providing the API. How it all started, let's see. So initially when Java people thought of providing an API to interact with the database server, which helps the Java developers to interact with the database server. So at that time, the Java people have faced a lot of hurdles. There were a lot of issues. Okay. So the first issue which they came across is database servers. You know, there were so many database servers. So many DB servers that were there. And you see each database server, so it's different, is provided by different vendor. What will be the issue if you have so many database servers? Why it will be an issue? This can be an issue because you see the Java developers, Java people, they have to provide the API to connect to all the database servers. You see this API which they will provide. For suppose Java has provided an API to connect to the Oracle server. You know what? I can definitely say that we cannot use the same API to connect to MySQL server. And if Java is provided an API to connect to MySQL server, there is no guarantee that okay, or this API definitely it cannot be used to connect to DB2 server or Microsoft SQL server because that server is different again. So every database server is different from the other one. So all the database servers are different. That means Java has to provide a separate API for each database server. Java has to provide a separate API for each database server. And not only different database servers is an issue. Again, for each database server, you'll have versions. For suppose if you take Oracle itself, so you got Oracle 8, Oracle 9, Oracle 10, Oracle 11. So every fortnight, frequently or regularly, Oracle people will be releasing a new server, new version of server. So accordingly, now Java people have to also make sure that they provide the API, update the API to support the new versions of database server as well. So that means they have to continuously provide the support for this API as well. So not only providing the API again later on, they have to maintain them. So they thought, this is going to be difficult. It's not that easy. So this is the first issue which they have faced. So is it clear for you people? Can I have yes or no? Is it clear for you people, all of you? Okay. Now how this issue is addressed? What do you people think? How Java people they have addressed this issue? How they were able to overcome this issue? Or if you are in that situation, what you will do? Some middle tier between Java and database. Okay. How that middle tier will address the issue? Okay. You know what Java people have done to address this issue? What they did is So they decided not to provide that code to connect to the database servers. They will not, you know, they'll not take this responsibility of providing that code API to connect to each database server. Then who will provide this code or this API to connect to their to database servers? You see, now they just left it to the database vendors. Java people, what they did is, instead of they providing the API to connect to the database servers, they just left it to the database vendors. Now they have asked database vendors to provide the API to connect to their respective database servers. Vendors means database vendors means people who provide who develop this database servers. Okay, the companies who develop this database servers, who provide this database servers. So now they will be responsible for developing the APIs and providing that APIs to connect to their respective database servers. So Oracle has to provide the API to connect to Oracle server. SQL, Microsoft SQL people have to provide the API to connect to Microsoft SQL server. MySQL server vendors, they should provide the code to connect to MySQL server, and DB2 also the same. So every database vendor who provides that server, now they are responsible for providing this API. So now this issue has been addressed to some extent, I can say. How it is addressed? Now, see, this database vendors, they have to definitely provide this API to connect to the respective database servers, right? What if they don't provide the API to connect to their database servers? Then what happens? Yes. Yes. What if they don't? For suppose a database vendor, let's say they didn't provide this API to connect to their database server. Then what happens? Yes, it is simple. Now, Java developers, they're not going to use this database server. If a if a database vendor, if they didn't provide the API to connect to the database server, then Java developers will not use that database server. So why Java developers will not use the database server? Yes, because there is no API to connect to that particular database server. If Oracle didn't provide an API to connect to the database server, Oracle database server, then how a Java developer will be able to connect to that server? They will not be able to do that, right? Yes. So that means that server will not be used by the Java community. So no database vendor would like this to happen, right? They don't want this to happen. Yes. Plus they want, database vendors want their database server to be used. Yes. So that's the reason why definitely they have to provide the API to connect to their database server. Yes. Okay. Hope this is clear for you people. Okay, fine. So the issue is addressed. But again, there is one more issue here. But still, we have an issue, I can say. So what is it? Can you people tell me? I can say still there is an issue. What is it? Okay. So this time, the issue here, I can say that we got different APIs to connect to different database servers. We got different APIs to connect to different database servers, right? Because every database vendor is providing their own API to connect to their server. Oracle is providing their own API. API means what here? Okay, just want to check with you people, don't mind. What is an API? Okay, and what exactly will have in the API? You got predefined classes and predefined methods, right? We got predefined code now which we can make use of which we can make use of to connect to the database server. Now you see API contains predefined classes and predefined methods. Now, every database vendor will provide their own set of predefined classes and methods in the API. They will be different from the other database vendor API. Now, no two APIs will be same. So, Oracle people will provide an API. That means we'll have set of classes and methods, you know, and interfaces which we can use to connect to the Oracle server. Now, MySQL database vendors may provide altogether a different API, different set of classes and methods and interfaces to connect to MySQL server. That means if you know or if you learn a particular API to connect to a particular database server, there is no guarantee that you will use the same API to connect to another database server. That means for every database server you have a separate API, so which is different from another database server. Now you got to learn all these APIs, so which are different from each other. Okay, all these APIs will be different from each other. That will be the issue. So for each database server, you got a different API. You got different set of classes and interfaces. That is one of the issues here. Yeah. So is it clear for you people? The issue now? Though Java people have found a solution for the issue, but still, you see, this can be another issue. Now, every database vendor is supposed to provide the API to connect to their respective database servers. But the problem is, every database server will provide their own API, which is different from the other database vendor. Now, as a Java developer, we have to suffer. We have to learn all these APIs. So many APIs to learn, right? That is the issue. Okay. Now, first of all, you people understood the issue here. Now, second issue. First issue, you understood in that issue was addressed, but again, the solution of that first issue again has got a problem, right? There is an issue with the solution. So, is the second issue clear for you people? So, we got different APIs for different database servers. Yeah. Can I have yes or no? Is it clear? Okay. Now, can you people tell me how this issue can be addressed? How this issue can be addressed? Any solution? Yes. Any solution for this issue? So there is actually a very good solution for this issue. So let me talk about the solution here for this issue. You see, if somehow if we can force the database vendors, all the database vendors, to follow a standard approach to define this or to develop this API, if they can follow a standard approach, that means if all the database vendors, if they can use set of common methods to, if they can use set of common methods to implement or to provide this connection code, okay, if they can provide set of common methods to implement this connection code, then this issue can be addressed. You see, like similar to your collection API. So we saw that no matter it is which collection class, array list, vector, stack, linker list, you'll find that all the collection classes, they've got set of common methods, right, to perform these operations, to manage the collections, I can say, right? So they provide set of common methods to work with that collections. For suppose if you want to add a collection, add an element to the collection, you got add method, to remove method, to search for the elements contains method, to find out the size, the count of that collection, you got size method. This way you got common methods. In all the collection classes we have set of same methods, right? So similarly for all the database vendors, if they can provide the connection code by implementing set of common methods, no matter which database vendor is providing the API, if they can just use common set of methods, all the database vendors, if they can do that, then the issue can be addressed, right? Hope you got the point here. Yes. So how this can be achieved here? What do you people think? Yes. How this can be achieved? You know the answer for this. Definitely you know the answer for this. At least now I gave you people an example uh, through the collection API. I'm just giving you people this example collection API. Now you know the answer for this. Interface. That's right, exactly. That's right, exactly. Interface is the answer. Now you see, all the collection classes, they implement a common interface called as collection interface, and in that interface itself you got this common methods which this collection classes have to implement, right? So in this collection interface itself, the common methods, they have been defined. So what methods the collection classes have to implement, that methods are defined in the collection interface, and all the collection classes, they implement this interface and implement the methods which are defined in that interface, right? So this way, you see, the API has been standardized. All the collection classes, they implement set of common methods. Similarly, Java people, if they can force the database vendors to implement set of common methods to provide the connection code, then the issue will be addressed. And that is what Java has done. That is where JDBC API come into the picture. That is where the JDBC API came into the picture. Okay, yes. That is where JDBC API came into the picture. You know, in the JDBC API, you'll find that you got set of interfaces which are supposed to be implemented by DB vendors, database vendors, to provide the connection code to connect to the respective database DB servers, you can say. Okay, so the JDBC API, this is what we got. Yes. So in the JDBC API, you'll find that most of this API is full of interfaces. And who is implementing these interfaces? Database vendors. Okay. So, so far we have worked with connection. Connection, it is part of your JDBC API. And connection is not a class. So what is connection? It's an interface. Connection is not a class, it's an interface. Statement, it is also interface. Result set is also interface. Prepared statement is also interface. So then are we using this interfaces here? I can say no. We are not directly using this interfaces. That means now, yes, they are interfaces, but generally in interfaces you'll have abstract methods, right? So abstract methods means methods which are not implemented, so which are the methods without any body or without any definition. So how come we can make use of this methods? We can't do that, right? So how can we call abstract methods? And into this reference variables, we got interface object reference or what? Which object reference is stored? So we can't instantiate that interface, right? We cannot instantiate that interface. Then what exactly is stored here into this reference variable? You know, this interfaces which you're looking at, they are implemented by these interfaces are implemented by database vendors. Database vendors, they implement this interfaces, the methods which are defined in this interfaces. They implement this interfaces, okay? I mean the methods which are defined in that interface. Database vendors will provide a set of classes which implement this interface. And basically we call them as JDBC drivers. JDBC drivers means set of classes which implement JDBC API interfaces. JDBC drivers means they are nothing but set of classes which implement JDBC API interface. So in these classes, comma, we'll add a comma. In these classes, or through these classes, I can say DB vendors provide the connection code. Provide the connection code. Okay. So what are JDBC drivers? They are nothing but set of classes which implement the JDBC API interfaces. So you see, now database vendors, by implementing these interfaces, that means in the interfaces you'll have that methods, right? They will override that methods, and in that methods they will write that connection code. So all the database vendors will be using the same interfaces. So they'll implement the same set of methods, but from database vendor to database vendor, the JDBC drivers connection code will be different. So Oracle database vendors will provide you the JDBC drivers in which you'll have the connection code to connect to the Oracle server. The same is the case with MySQL server. So every database vendor will provide their own JDBC drivers which can be used to connect to the respective database servers. But one thing is common between all these JDBC drivers, all these drivers. What is it? All the drivers, you see, that means set of classes, they implement the same set of interfaces here. They implement the same set of interfaces. That's it. So is it clear for you people? Now you see, as of now, the methods which we are calling here, so internally what happens is the database vendor will be providing the classes, right? Those class methods will be invoked here. So if you want to use this JDBC API, if you want to use this JDBC API, JDBC API is alone not enough. Only JDBC API alone is not enough here. JDBC API alone is not enough. So along with JDBC API, you need JDBC drivers. So this JDBC drivers, they are not part of your API. They're not part of your standard API. Okay, JDBC drivers, they're not part of your API. Is this background noise disturbing you? Let me know, please. Not. So you're not hearing this much, right? Okay, good. Thank you. So one more day to go, that's it. Maybe today is last here in this area. Okay. So yes, if you want to use JDBC API, then JDBC API alone is not enough. Along with JDBC API, you need JDBC drivers. So who will provide the JDBC drivers? What did I say? Who will provide the JDBC drivers? Database vendors. Okay. Now initially when I've created this project, actually I've added JDBC drivers, but I didn't discuss about it because it's highly impossible to understand that JDBC drivers initially. Now you understood this. Yes. So now for suppose if you want to connect to MySQL server, then you have to make sure that you download this JDBC drivers provided by MySQL server. Okay, I'll show you. Just a second. Okay. You see, this is the official site from where you can download this JDBC drivers for MySQL server. Okay. So if you want to connect to the MySQL server, so along with JDBC drivers, sorry, along with JDBC API, you need to download this JDBC drivers as well. Okay. So here is a select platform. It is Microsoft Windows, but select platform independent option here. So please make a note of it. So before downloading this drivers, select platform independent. Select platform independent. Yes. Okay. Now you have to download the zip file. Down you see the zip file. You have to download that zip file. Yes. So download the zip file, the second option which you got. So once you done downloading the zip file, just go to that place where you have that zip file. You see here I've got that zip file. Make sure that you go to the place where you have that zip file and simply extract it. Okay, download the zip file and extract it and open this extracted folder. you open this extracted folder, so you should see a jar file. You see this one, MySQL connector Java jar file. Just make a note of it. From the extracted folder, this is the jar file. This is the file which you need. Okay. Okay. Now what to do with this jar file? Actually, what exactly got here in this jar file? What do you people think? In this jar file, what you'll have? Just guess. Okay, what will be the contents of the jar file? That is what I'm asking. Not tables. So this jar file itself is your JDBC drivers. What is it? It is JDBC drivers. JDBC drivers means, just now as I told you people, what is JDBC drivers? So you will have set of classes which implement the JDBC API interfaces. You'll have set of classes which implement JDBC API interfaces. Okay, you'll have set of classes which implement JDBC API interfaces. That is what you'll have in that jar file. Okay, yes, you got the point, all of you. So in this jar file itself, you have the Java classes that implement JDBC API interfaces. In that, they are JDBC drivers, and in that classes itself, you have that connection code and all. Now, what to do with that jar file? So, what we have to do? We have to add it to this project now. What to do? Add it to this project. Now, if you want to use those classes which are provided by the JDBC vendors, now we need to add those drivers to this project here. I'll show you people. You see, just a minute. First of all, I've already added them. I'll remove it and then I'll show you again. Please make a note of it. Adding JDBC drivers. This is heading. Heading is adding JDBC drivers to the build path. Adding JDBC drivers to the build path. Okay, that is the heading. How to do that? Let's see. So first step, select the project and right click on it. Select the project and right click on it. You see, you got properties here down. When you select the project and right click on it, you will find properties. In the properties, you select this properties, you see. Once you select the properties, you'll find Java build paths. You'll find Java build paths. Select Java build paths. Okay. Yes. Select Java build paths. Once you select the Java build path, you see on the right side you should see tabs like source, projects, libraries. Select the libraries tab here. Select the libraries tab. Select the libraries tab and click on add external jars. Once you select the libraries tab, you see on the right side you will find these buttons. One of the options is add external jars. Click on add external jars. And now you have to browse to the location where you have the jar file. In the extracted folder of that zip file, you'll have the jar file, right? Now browse to the location where you have that jar file. Okay? Yes. And select this jar file and add it. Yes. Click on open and click on OK. Okay. So this is how you'll add that JDBC drivers to the build path. Yes. So is it clear for you people? Okay, good. Hope you people have made a note of it. Yes. So now similarly, we'll have JDBC drivers for the other database servers as well. We'll have JDBC drivers for other database servers. So every database vendor will provide the JDBC drivers accordingly. Okay. Yes. So now for other database servers, I'll provide you the details. Okay. Next class, I'll stop it here today. Okay. So this weekdays, coming week, so I'll extend the class timings to extend the class timings over the weekdays also, so that we can keep up the pace. Okay. So I'll stop it here today. So In the next class, I'll be talking about JDBC drivers for different database servers. For different DB servers, how to obtain them and how to add them, how to connect to different database servers. As of now, we saw how to connect to MySQL server. Similarly, we'll see how to connect to SQL server, Oracle server. I'll provide you the details and the JDBC driver details as well. And we'll discuss few more things about the JDBC drivers. And then I'll talk about DAO pattern. So this part JDBC drivers, it won't take much time. DO is also very important. It's easy to understand data access object pattern. And after that, I'll talk about stored procedures. So if you got some time, please go through stored procedures. Okay. So before coming to the next class, go through stored procedures. Okay. Stored procedures. Okay, fine. So that's all. We'll have a class on Monday again at our regular time. So we'll meet on Monday at our regular time. Okay. Yeah. Thank you all. Bye bye.